friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And even as I was setting up, Antonio came over here and just started crowing right away before I can even start talking. So, yep, there he is. This is the joys of shooting videos outside, but I really needed to do this one. Outside today because I'm talking about my blueberries in pots. I wanted to give you an update after all of these years, because when I first started my channel with the blueberries in pots, they were flourishing, they were beautiful, everything was great for years. So for about 8 years, they did amazingly well in these bigger pots, like you can see right here on the deck. Now today's date that I'm shooting this, just so you can understand the time of the year, is actually August 11th, 2024. This one here is actually a new one. It's doing just fine, and I'm temporarily keeping it in a pot for maybe a year or two until I decide for sure where it is I would like to put it permanently. Now this one back here, this is one of my original ones that I bought back in 2013, and it was probably about that big. I bought 6 of them at the time. This is actually the healthiest looking one out of all of them. I have since lost 2 of them completely, or actually 3 of them completely have died. The other 2 are just hanging in there right now, and I actually have cut them way back. I'll probably put a couple of pictures of them in here so you can see what they look like right now. But they looked a little closer to this, but not quite as good as this one. But I decided to try just hacking them way back, and I'm probably going to cut out even more just to see what happens. One of them has some new growth coming up from the base, which is a very good sign. You know, at first I was just so pleased at how well they were doing in the pots. They flourished. Considering they were in pots on the deck, I would get tons of blueberries from them and did very good. Always had more than I needed to get us through the year for whatever I wanted to use blueberries in, be it pies, jams, crisps, and more. When the first one died, I wasn't sure what to make of that, and it never came back. The second one seemed to die all the way back, but then it started to get new growth last year. Then that died too. And I didn't mess with anything in that pot, just planted those 2 pots. I just planted nasturtiums in them just so I'd have something growing in there, and just kind of waited it out. Then the third one that was in this pot here died this year. And I knew it was going to go because for the past couple of years, it had been looking very spindly. It wasn't getting any new growth coming up from the base, which you need to see. This one here doesn't have any new growth this year, but it did last year. So this one is clearly a little healthier than the other ones that didn't get any. What I found this year, I thought, well, I want to put at least this newer one that my friend got me last year into one of these bigger pots. I'm going to try seeing if I can pull this spindly one out. And I didn't really try with the other ones. I assumed they were just way too root bound, and that was part of the problem. And when I went, I just kind of rocked it back and forth, and sure enough, I was able to lift the whole thing out. The root ball, the tap root, was still in place, but that was it. There were no roots expanding out like there should have been. There should have been roots expanding clear out, filling out up the whole pot. And as I looked closely at it, I realized that once the blueberries got to where they were filling up the whole pot, the roots of them, they started rotting the roots from where they touched the pot from the outside in. And that's why little at a time they were looking worse and worse each year for the past few years. Now I want to show you what they looked about. I can't remember what year this photo was taken, but it was after I started my channel. And this is how my blueberries looked at their peak on my deck. And I mean, they were beautiful. They were amazing. I mean, they were wonderful. And so the reason I'm giving this update is because if you're going to put your blueberries in pots, I just recommend it's only for a couple of years until you decide for sure a more permanent in the ground place. Because long term, at least, you know, after 8 years, they're gonna start going backwards in their health, no matter how well you treat them. Now, what I did for fertilizing them every year was making sure they got at least 1 dose of blood meal. They're like the only things I worried about getting blood meal on because they were in pots. And then I would usually pile either grass clippings or chicken coop scrapings on top, because blueberries, like most berries, love acidic soil. So other things I would do all through the year is tossing coffee grounds on there. You know, just, it was easy because they're out here on the deck too. I'd just come out here, toss the coffee grounds in the different pots. I'd go for a different pot each day. And that did good for years. And then suddenly it just didn't. And it wasn't until I pulled the one that was in this pot here out that I realized what was happening. So then I went over to the other two pots where the first ones had died, and sure enough, I was able to reach in there, grab the remaining stalk and just pull it right out. Same thing for each one. So what I'm doing with those pots now is, not only will I be using them for nasturtiums from now on, because I find the nasturtiums do great there. They climb up into my grapevines and everything, and they're great. Now, I have a couple nasturtiums growing this year, but I didn't intentionally plant any. So the ones that are growing in there are not, I'll probably never get flowers on them because they're way behind. Here, even though nasturtiums will self-seed, they do better if you can save the seeds and plant them in a more protected area until the weather starts to warm up and they get to be at least yay high. Then transplant them where you want them. So those happen to be coming up in the pots because of the seeds that fell in them last year, but I only got a couple. And they came up really, really late in the season. But as you can see by the photo, I'm putting strawberries in there because I find strawberries on pots on the deck do best for me than anywhere else. And the bigger the pot, the better the strawberry plants do. So I have the same thing going on my front deck and have for years. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to be converting each of the blueberry pots here on the deck into strawberry pots. And the ones over there, one of them is a pot of white strawberries. The other one is a pot of just regular June bearing strawberries. And that plant that I put in there was just one little plant that was in a small pot back here on the other side of my grapevines and blackberries you see coming through here. And so it might get a few strawberries, and it got too overshadowed by all the grapevines that it just never did great. But I put it in there and it blew up because that area gets a lot of the afternoon and late afternoon sun. And they just love it there. I've got tons of runners coming off of there, so I'm going to be making more plants off of those and then filling up these other pots. And I've already started putting strawberry plants in these pots. I still would like, out of curiosity, since I'm hacking these way back, I'm still going to leave the three in there, this one and the other two, for at least one more year, just to see how they do. Just to see, since I'm hacking them way back, to see if maybe that will help get them going again. But this newer one here, I'll eventually be moving into the ground either next year or the year after. I'm likely going to put them in the main garden bed back here where I typically grow my corn. I have a lot of herbs that grow back here, and I have currants too. So that's where I'm thinking about putting that. So anyway, I just, if you're already growing your blueberries in pots, or you followed my original example when I shared the story about blueberries in containers several years ago, I highly recommend, if your blueberries are still doing good now, take them and put them in the ground if you can, as soon as you're able. And there's nothing wrong with starting them in pots and keeping them in there for a couple of years, but you don't want them to get root bound because they're going to be almost impossible to get out of that pot without breaking the pot up. But before they get root bound, you then want to make sure you get them in a good location in the ground. They're going to get a lot bigger for you anyway and put out a lot more berries. My purpose of growing them on the deck initially was, we didn't have this big garden area back here where I was still trying to keep more yard, and we had a swimming pool back here and I wanted to keep that. Then later we just got rid of all that, the trampoline and the pool, and then turned it into a garden. So though we may still, for the grandkids, get another trampoline, it's just going to go out at our other piece of property now that we have a place for it. That's my update. So just some food for thought on that, no pun intended. But again, remember those things. They don't have to be expensive. Fertilizer, you don't even have to use blood meal. That was just the extra step I took because they were in pots. But blueberries love grass clippings. You can just pile those on there high at the base of your blueberries, and chicken manure. So, If you have chickens, then you can just go, when you clean out your chicken coop, like I like to use straw. And one of the reasons I like to use straw is so that I can just clean that all out and put that in, like where I grow my corn, where I grow my potatoes, and pile it on top of my blueberry pots. Because anything that loves a more acidic soil is going to love all of that. So, and the blood meal, like I said, especially if you have them in the ground, you shouldn't even have to invest in blood meal. Just use what you have. Your coffee grounds, your grass clippings, and chicken manure if you have chickens. So there's my little tip on the blueberries in containers. I hope this gave you some ideas and some things to consider. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.